Hey guys, it's Chloe here from Dream Fitness. Today we've got a video for you about menstruation and how it affects performance. So first thing I'm going to cover in this video is what is the menstrual cycle. So ladies, if you're not aware, get listening. Gents, you should also listen too, because it could be helpful for you if you have a special female in your life and you want to help them with training, or maybe it's something they may not know. Listen in. So let's talk about the cycle basics. So the menstrual cycle can be split up into two basic phases. We have the follicular phase, which is the first kind of half of the month, if you like. And then you have the luteal phase, which is the second half of the month. So if you think of a cycle as approximately 28 days, that's the average for most women. You have the follicular for the first 14 and the luteal for the second 14. From there, we can break that up into then 4 slightly more in-depth phases of the menstrual cycle. So phase 1 is menstruation, your period. That is where you are bleeding, or a female is bleeding. This phase ordinarily lasts 1 to 5 days. Now, with all these phases, that does vary between female to female, so there is room for slight changes in these numbers. This is just the averages. Phase 2 is the follicular phase. This runs roughly from day 6 to 10. Again, there is some room for change in that, and this is at the end of your period, so that has finished, and then you move into the follicular phase. In this phase, your estrogen levels start to increase a little. This is where you'll feel the most strong though, because your testosterone is also higher. So if you're looking to go for a PB in training, or if you're just looking to do something that's maybe a little bit more demanding energy-wise, this is a good time. Phase 3 is your ovulation phase. So at this point, estrogen is at its peak in your cycle. So this is when you may start to feel bloated, you may start to feel a little bit more sluggish, you might have a little bit of brain fog. Generally, energy starts to become a little bit lower at this time, but not at the lowest. The ovulation phase runs for roughly 7 days, and that's from days 11 to 18. And phase 4 is the luteal phase. This is the final phase of your menstrual cycle. This is when the energy levels become much lower. You start to have potentially symptoms of PMS. Progesterone levels are higher, estrogen and testosterone are lower. So the progesterone can cause mood swings, it can cause reduced serotonin, so you might not feel so happy, and all round just a little bit more kind of blah. But the luteal phase runs for roughly 9 days, roughly from around day 19 to 28, and then that brings you back around full circle to that menstruation once more. It's worth noting that in the luteal phase, things like body fat can be increased due to that increased progesterone, because your insulin sensitivity is lessened. So when you're in menstruation, phase 1 and phase 2, your insulin sensitivity is heightened, so you'll utilize carbohydrates a lot better, so your energy is increased and a lot more effective. But in that phase 4, it can become lessened, and your body is more likely to use body fat as its energy source. So when you feel a little bit more bloated, you probably will find that if you were to use something like body tracks, your body fat is increased slightly, and that is because that insulin sensitivity is lessened. So if you're going to grab some foods, go for those good fats, things that are high in omega-3s, avocados, nuts, oily fish, all that type of stuff is going to make you feel a little bit better than those high carby foods. And that pretty much wraps up the menstrual cycle. So with that information, how does this affect our performance? So if we're going to go back to the start of those 4 menstrual cycle phases, if we're looking at phase 1, at that time, you might find you have slightly lower energy levels, but you also have lower energy needs. So high carbohydrate foods are going to be beneficial. You might not feel as hungry as you did in that sort of lead up to your menstruation, but you may still feel a little bit less energetic. So in terms of training, you might find that you don't feel as strong, you might feel a little bit more fatigued quicker, you might feel like you're getting breathless quicker. So the best port of call is to ultimately see how your body feels. So if you're not feeling as strong as you were, you can reduce those weights, increase the reps if you needed to, or just go for a slightly lesser volume. So you could do 1 less set or similar. You might find something like a HIIT workout, something that's 20 or 30 minutes, feels a lot better than a long drawn out hour-long session. And take time to do a little bit of stretching, just kind of sit with your body, see how you feel. For some of us, it doesn't affect us at all, so carry on training. Don't reduce your volume or your intensity if it doesn't physically affect you. If you feel good, go for it. Once we get into that phase 2, that's when our energy level is going to start going back up. So we can still carry on with things like moderate weightlifting, high intensity interval sessions. We're still going to be utilising carbs pretty well, but we won't need as much in terms of total calorie intake. So again, keep pushing through with those workouts. If you feel good, go for those PBs. If you feel a little bit more tired still, then obviously, adapt your training to how you feel, but don't use it as an excuse. Bringing us round to phase 3, ovulation phase. Our estrogen is at its highest. You may feel bloated at this point, as we covered previously. This is when we may feel like we have the most strength, but it's also when we're at the most risk of injury. So it is worth taking your time if you are getting back into those heavier weights, if you're pushing for a PB, take your time, be careful of your form, and again, listen to your body. With all of the research that has been done on women and the menstrual cycle and how it affects their performance, ultimately, it's very varied. So it is very personal to you and how your body feels. And finally, in that phase 4, the luteal phase, this is when our calorie burn is hitched up. So you're going to be burning more calories because your metabolic rate is increased and your core temperature is slightly increased as well. So at this time, you can utilize fat burning exercise such as low steady state cardio, so things like steady runs, something like an uphill walk. That type of cardio is going to be really good, really beneficial. Your body is going to also be in an increased fat burning state. So again, you can utilize this. Your body's going to be using those body fat stores. You may also have increased body fat too. So if you're checking your weights, be wary of that. It may not be that is because of how you've eaten. It may just be that's because you are where you're at in your menstrual cycle. This is a prime opportunity to maybe rein it in a little bit. If you need a little bit of a deload week, utilize this time. If you can plan your training alongside your cycle, it's going to work really well as a deload week. So I might do increased stretching, I may do a little bit more mobility work, and I will bring those weights back down to a much more moderate to low intensity. Lower the intensity and lower the volume. So hopefully you found this information helpful. As I said before, your menstrual cycle is very unique to you. We are all unique. None of us have the same phases, the same duration, the same effects on our body. So ultimately, it's down to you to track those feelings and tailor your training to your cycle. If you're feeling strong, go for it. If you're feeling tired, fatigued, and a little bit more sluggish, rein it back in for a week. Go a little bit slower, take more rest if you need it, or do something a little bit more restorative for your body. Ultimately, there's no reason to stop training during your period unless it's really cripplingly painful. If it is, it may be worth a visit to the doctors to see if there's something that we can do for you to make you slightly less uncomfortable. But exercise is always going to relieve that discomfort from your menstrual cycle. So try and get some exercise in, even if it's just a little bit of a walk, yoga, or similar. I hope you found this helpful today, guys, and hopefully we'll see you in the next one. Bye!